Today, I'm going over the Field Training Officer Program, or FTO, and the three top tips that you need to know as you go through the program. Let's discuss. Before we get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One is the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the police hiring process. Plus, there's some hidden bonuses in there I know you're going to like. Next is a coaching call with any member of the team or even myself, where we can sit down, go over your police hiring process or your career in general, and set you up to the goals to success and succeed a little bit faster than the average candidate. Now, FTO. Field training officer program. Are you the FTO? Are they the FTO? What's going on here? So typically you'll hear it said a lot like this, and a lot of departments, I shouldn't say a lot of departments, some departments are trying to revamp it, and everyone's put a new coin term on everything, so they could put their stamp on it and make a name for themselves. But regardless, when I talk about the Field Training Officer Program, or FTO, as I'm going to refer to it from now on, I'm talking about the program that new police officers are in, coming straight out of the police academy, or even lateraling over. Most of them have to go through FTO too, to make sure they're up to speed with that department's policies and procedures, and what it is that you have to ensure you're ready for. So FTO, like I said, is called Field Training Officer Program, or Field Training Officer. Now, that is what your trainer, say if you came into the department, my department, and I was assigned as your FTO, I would be your Field Training Officer. So I would be the one in charge of your day-to-day training. And this is a one-on-one level, right? Now, a lot of times we'll just refer to the individual as in FTO, or FTO for short, or field training. So a lot of these terms are used in conjunction with one another and ultimately referring to the same thing. But when the actual terminology is, you send an officer away to go get certified as an FTO or in-house certification as a field training officer. So the big thing here is, what's going to be in that program? How's it going to affect you in your law enforcement career? I've said this before on other videos, and I'll say it again. It's not a cakewalk. Matter of fact, the one thing about FTO is you are actually more scrutinized in FTO than, say, the academy, because the academy, it's one to many. And what I mean by that is one to many is one instructor to many students, so to say, or many recruits, as I like to refer to it. And if you don't know my ranking structure, once again, this is mine. You're an applicant or a candidate when you're applying. You're a recruit when you're in the academy, and you're a trainee when you're in FTO, right? And then I consider you a full-fledged officer once you're off FTO, even if you're on probation. If you're out there serving and patrolling by yourself or taking calls by yourself, I consider you a full-fledged officer. I don't probation at that point in time. That's just HR. But the big factor that I have here is, when you're a trainee, right, and you've passed the academy, or you're at that department and you're in the field training program, you have to be on your P's and Q's, because it's not one to many anymore. It is one to one. You are assigned an FTO, and it's you and that FTO working together at all times. And sometimes, which I really like, is when a department will rotate you through FTOs, because then other FTOs get to kind of sign off on whether or not that first FTO or the prior FTOs did their job, right? So I'm a big fan for when you're, a patrol officer, or when you're early in, to have the excuse me, have the Panama schedule. Panama schedule is really nice, especially as a new law enforcement officer, because you get days off during the week to get stuff done. You get a long weekend every other week. You work one weekend every other week, but it starts like this. If you were your typical schedule, your first week would be, you work Monday, Tuesday, you're off Wednesday, Thursday, then you work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, then your next week, you're off Monday, Tuesday, you work Wednesday, Thursday, then you're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So every other week, you only have to work 2 days. I really like that schedule. And if you take that schedule as a 12-hour shift schedule with 4 shifts, it's really easy. I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's easier to man 4 shifts than it is to man 6 shifts with swing shifts. And because you have to have so many officers for patrol, depending on your size, And for FTO purposes, I can assign you. I like a 4 month FTO program or 6 month, right? I don't like the 1 to 2 month FTO programs because I'm just you're really packing stuff in. Now, what I will say about those 30-day or 60-day FTO programs is a lot of them won't sign you off if they don't feel you're ready. So they'll push you out. But I really like those 4 month FTO programs, and it works really well with a Panama schedule. So what it is you're assigned one FTO on days for a month, and then you're assigned the other FTO on the other shift on days for a month. So you get to know that shift. Then you're assigned an FTO on nights for a shift. Then you move over for 1 month. Then you move over to the other FTO. And that FTO is your final sign off at nights. Or you can start on nights and work your way to days. There's no real issue there. But I do like it. I like it for that specific factor that you get to meet all the shifts, you get to learn from different individuals, and you get to be tested. And then if one FTO is, it keeps the FTOs in check. If one FTO isn't pulling their weight, it's obvious to the other FTOs. So that being said, now I promised you 3 tips to succeed in FTO. And here's where I'm going to get started with this. You do not need to wait for FTO to start to have success in it. So, number one issue I see with individuals as a candidate that is immediately fixable, right? Because the main issue I see is situational awareness, SA or situational awareness, specifically in regards to officer safety, right? So if you walk into a situation and someone has a you get a call and you walk into a situation where someone has a walking stick, right? Say they're out for a hike and they have a walking stick. Could that be used as a weapon? Yes, absolutely. You respond to a park, someone has a walking stick or even a trekking pole that has kind of a point on the end. Could that be used for a weapon? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean you need to pull out your firearm and tell them to drop it if they're just walking and mildly agitated, like with verbal agitation, right? No, that's bad situational awareness. You need to be aware of your surroundings. Now, if you go into a situation where someone has a knife pulled out and is threatening someone else and within the proximity or capability to do it, that is going to call for a different tool from your duty belt. But what I'm getting at is where I see officers, they're hesitant. They're hesitant to pull a compliance tool or any tool or even go hands on, which is fine. I'd rather you be hesitant, but at the same point in time, you have to be cognizant of what's there. If your FTO is saying, "Hey, detain that individual and place them in cuffs for safety reasons," and you're hesitant to do it, people can sense that and they will try to take advantage of it, or that's when they'll try to fight you, and then it becomes a serious issue for your safety, their safety, and the safety of everyone else involved. So that is my biggest one. But situational awareness, while you can work on it, I think that's where the FTO comes in, and that's where they have to make sure that they're training you for that. That is not number one. That's just a little bonus. Number one is situational awareness, but it's actually based on geography, right? Knowing the maps of your town, your city, knowing the roads, things like that. If you know you're getting hired at a county sheriff's that's 2 counties over, or a local PD that's, say a larger metropolitan city, get on Google Maps, start studying roads, start learning like what's north, what's south. If you get a call, to Main Street and you're up on Smith Street and you know Main Street's south, you don't have to pull over and plug in your GPS and try to find the best way. No, you need to start heading south to get to that direction, and maybe you're more knowledgeable, when you get closer to the department or closer to the main town hub or city hub. These are all things. Learn the street numbers. Cities have a very structured way of doing street numbers, and they usually break it down off of one centralized location. So you got northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, or whatever, northeast, southwest, whatever have it. It's a critical component of getting on there. If you don't know directions, I promise you that's the one thing or one of the major things that excuse me, that your FTO is going to ding you on. And it's not just knowing the streets. Where are the hospitals located? As a law enforcement officer, you deal with a lot of medical emergencies. It's not just EMS. Or you might have to go, EMS might tell you, hey, we're transporting this individual to, ABC Regional Medical Center. And you go, next thing you're thinking, like, where's ABC Regional Medical Center? Yes, there's GPS, but if you have to quickly follow them over there because that individual's a suspect or violent or something like that, maybe your FTO's riding in the ambulance and you have to drive behind them or something along. I'm not saying that that's probably going to happen because that seems like it probably violates some type of policy. Maybe you have to ride with it. It just depends on what your policy is, but that type of thing can happen and you need to be prepared for it. You're not always going to be able to rely on your FTO. When it comes to knowing your area, I think it's one of the most critical components to being able to provide a rapid, secure, and safe response as a law enforcement officer. Sometimes you might be responding to an area where it has a very tricky intersection, and you might be running code three. Well, no matter what, you pretty much need to stop at that intersection. You can't just blow through it with lights and sirens, especially depending on how fast you're driving, because there's a thing where you can outrun your lights and sirens, which means that the sound and people's observation of it. You want to be very critical and very specific when it comes to your geographical location and where you're going to patrol. And I don't care if you're applying to a county sheriff's and it's a real rural area, you should still know the main hubs going through the county. What's the fastest way to get to, the county hub or the main town in the county, or, know where everything is located in reference to your department headquarters or wherever the detention facility is. Critical components, right? Know where the schools are, know where the hospitals are, know where the county buildings are, know everything that you can possibly know, and you can do that doing Google Maps and doing some driving on your off time. So don't go into it and be unprepared, because once again, I've seen people get removed from FTO because they just couldn't figure out geographical locations. So, all right. The next one would be your ability to ask questions. This goes into what I was just saying previously. Do not be afraid of your FTO. They are there to teach you. I am not saying that every FTO is created equally. Sometimes you can get a bad FTO. Sometimes you have FTOs, and I'm just giving you the real world experience. Sometimes you have FTOs that just become FTOs because it makes their resume look good, or they get a collateral duty incentive pay on it, which means they get paid more every month for being an FTO. Um, it doesn't mean that, what do you call a doctor that barely passes med school still a doctor? What do you call a cop that barely passes the academy still a cop? Same thing with FTO. What do you call an FTO officer that doesn't want to do it or is just in it for the money? Still an FTO officer. Now, I've been blessed my entire career. I've had really good FTOs. I've been assigned, kind of like daily assigned to other FTOs that were not so good. And I got to see the difference about it. And I will say early in my career, you know, certain things that I saw, I was kind of not taken aback by, but I'm like, is this really how it's done? Only to get farther down the line with a better FTO and say, no, okay, this is how it's done. But it doesn't mean you can't learn from all these FTOs. You can learn just as much as what not to do as what to do from an FTO. Going back to what I was saying is, don't be afraid to ask questions here. Now, I'm going to say that there's a balance, but I'd rather you lean on the ask too many questions than not enough, right? I want you to learn. So understand, anything in life, there's a balance. If you're sitting there talking for a 12-hour shift, asking questions the entire time, and they're trivial questions that don't matter, or they're repeat questions to where you're asking something for the 100th time of, how do I get to ABC Medical Center again? And you're literally sitting in the parking lot of it and you don't realize you're there. That's going to reflect negatively on your what's called your DOR, your daily observation report. And that is what they're filling out every single day, turning into the sergeant or the supervisor for your annual, or excuse me, for your daily review or weekly review. I would adamantly say you need to ask questions and learn. A lot of times, officers are nervous. They're afraid to make contact. They're afraid to get criticism, and you should ask for critique. Hey, how'd that stop go? How was my command presence? What did I approach the vehicle properly? Was I good cover or was I good contact? Um, and then ask this, how could I have done it better? Or how would you do it better? And take that feedback, right? Whether once again, even if you don't think that you can learn something from this individual, you can always learn something from every single person. Ask for the feedback. Hey, what you think of that contact position I took? Yeah, it was good. Any feed, what could I have done better? And you're not going to hurt my feelings. What could I have done better? You were a little bit too far in front of the B pillar, right? And you exposed yourself. I'm not going to ding you on a safety issue, but you kind of exposed yourself. Step back, make them turn around. It's uncomfortable for them, but unless there's some type of physical disability or reason they can't do it, don't expose yourself. You don't have to go up there, be charismatic, be personable, but don't put yourself in a safety situation because, and you should have learned this in the academy, traffic stops are one of the most dangerous spots for a law enforcement officer. Cool. Roger that. Thank you, sir, ma'am. Right. Excellent. That's what it should look like. Right. And they shouldn't be like just ripping you apart. But at the same point in time, they're going to be stern with you. Right. This is a paramilitary structure, is vertical structured. They're ranked above you. They're not going to degrade you, but at the same point in time, they're going to be firm, and you need to be willing to accept that. Matter of fact, you need to thrive on that. What can I do better? How can I improve upon this? You could shoot a perfect 300. Let's say you score your pistol qual at a 300. You can shoot a perfect 300. And then they say, and then still say, hey, what could I do better? And you're like, Frank, it's perfect. Well, no, because the shot grouping is like this, and maybe you can dial it into that, right? And that's, hey, yeah, now that you have this down on a qual with limited distractions and movement drills, why don't you go do a couple, active engagement drills? We find yourself a training site where you can use simunition or even live fire and go do moving and engagement threats, clearing buildings, things like that. That's all improvement for that. So I would not be I would not be shy about that. Be willing to talk and ask for feedback, right? That's what you want. That's how you learn. You need to remember it's field training. You're still in training. Now, this is where I disagree with some of the field training officers because a lot of times they're strictly in evaluation mode. All they're doing is evaluating and not training. And I don't agree with that, right? You're in field training. This is supposed to be able to take your basic level of instruction from the academy and apply it to real world scenarios, not even scenarios, real world events, right? Real world calls and responses so that you can learn and grow and then be released on your own. And not everyone's going to pass FTO, right? But you can make your chances a whole heck of a lot better and make sure you succeed and then get in and really start your career and be out there patrolling exactly how you imagined and dreamed you'd be doing it. It's the ability to talk and communicate starts in the car or starts with your FTO before you even make contact with any member of society or any member that you're dealing with from a law enforcement officer's standpoint, right? I'm going to jump over to the last one here, and the last one's going to be communication. So, just saying what I was just communicating right there, there's etiquette for communicating on the radio, right? And I'm not going to get into the specifics. I know how I like to do it. Uh, I know how I like to, I like to say who it is, unit one to dispatch, or right, or unit one to control. Why do I say that? Well, because unit one is saying who's calling, and then I'm saying to who. And chances are people listening to the radio might miss the first message. So the last thing you want to do is be control unit one, and they miss it and they just hear unit one. And they're like, all right, who's unit one trying to call? And it's them, and it can confuse the radio. This is just me. Other places will say, hey, say who you're calling to first and then say who you are. I like it this way, but follow your policy and your procedures. I'm a big fan of unit one to control. Go for control. Hey, Unit One, show me responding to a pedestrian flagging me down. I'll be out on foot. Code four, right? Roger that. Unit One, out on foot, and you'll give them the location corner of First and Main Street. Roger that. Unit One, out on foot. Citizen contact or citizen assist First and Main. Excellent. That's simple, simple radio comms. Where we get into an issue with is, and this is more prolonged towards the end and latter, mid or latter part of your FTO program. Uh, unit can unit one to dispatch. We're going to be out here with a citizen. They're flagging us down. They have. We're at First and Main Street, and we're going to see what they want, and then I'll get back with you. Once again, this is Unit One to control. You're just tying up the radio that entire time, and a lot of times radio comms are all shared on a single frequency. So every officer on duty that day is hearing that, right? Unless you're on a private channel. And it just ties up comms. And sometimes things are priority traffic, or maybe there is priority traffic, which means individuals are dealing with a very intense situation, right? And then you're not paying attention, and you key up the radio. Your FTO says, "Hey, let's stop and do this citizen assist," right? The citizen's flagging us down. And now, once again, you need to follow your department policy, and you get on the radio and you start saying everything that I just said, where I was stumbling through it. But it's priority traffic. You shouldn't. You're gonna All you're gonna get is an earful from dispatch saying, Unit One, priority traffic only, right? And they're gonna, and then your FTO is gonna get on you and say, "What are you doing? I didn't tell you to call that in," right? Now, this is stuff that you'll learn and you'll go and you will make these mistakes, right? Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We're there, FTOs are there to stop you from making a catastrophic mistake, right? A mistake that can't be undone, right? But at the same point in time, you know, a comms mistake, we're going to try and prevent it if it's priority traffic, but we're going to let you stumble through comms, right? And then we're going to teach you how to get a little bit better. You're going to demonstrate, learn, and then redo. And that's what's going to happen. Or we're going to demonstrate. Typically, how FTO works is we'll demonstrate, right? And then we'll teach, and then you'll do. And then we'll keep repeating that until you become comfortable. And here's the thing with radio comms. Just know that you're not going to feel real comfortable in radio comms till you've been working with a shift with those individuals for a long time, because you're not going to be having that in your mind to know what to look for. And in the academy, it's that we work on radio comms, but it's not a very pressing matter. Hopefully some academies are making it more important, but it's not the thing we harp on the most. We just kind of give you a couple calls and things like that because we really want to see how you deal with people and how you implement the trainings and the law and procedures and constitutional protected things. So I would be, as an FTO, I would be adamant at working on radio because I know you're not going to get that in the academy as much. But at the same point in time, it's important because radio is your lifeline to other officers typically, right? To letting individuals know if you're in a priority situation, you're going to jump on and you're going to say, "Hey, priority traffic, First and Main, we're being flagged down by individual," or starting over here, it would be Unit One to control. Show us on the corner of First and Main. We're getting out on foot. We're being flagged down by an individual who's stating and another man has a knife here on the corner of this block. Priority traffic only, right? And they'll jump back on and be like, "Roger that, priority traffic. Do you need assistance? Stand by while we gather additional information. No addition. Get units rolling our way. Code one, right? Which means just get them started heading that way. But everyone knows, like, hey, we'll amp it up if we need to go to code two or code three, or we can just kind of meander that way. And if we get told, hey, don't worry about it, false alarm, every unit just breaks back off and goes back to their normal patrols. Just kind of keep that in mind, right? You're not going to have it perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to stumble through it, but the whole point in time is getting better every single time. So Those would be my top three things for FTO. And the bonus one is situational awareness. Starting with situational awareness, right? Making sure that you are aware of your officer safety and then expounding into that into geography, right? Tip number one, knowing your geography. Tip number two, being able to talk and discuss with your FTO because you're going to have to do that with the public. So you might as well practice there and don't be afraid to ask questions. Then tip number three, going into communications on your radio. So hope this helps. Remember, those gifts are in the description for you. The Getting Started workshop is going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, plus some bonuses in there I think you'll like, as well as a coaching call with any member of the team or even myself if you'd like, where we sit down, discuss anything that you want to know about your hiring process or any questions you may have about succeeding in the career. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.